28, 2023 City of Bend Accessibility Advisory Committee hybrid meeting is called to order at 1:01 p.m. My name is John Halen. We're going to go through the roster, I guess. I'm John Halen, chair of COBAC. I am wearing a gray woolen jacket type thing, and I'm sitting center on site.
And John, I'll call out roll call. If you want to mirror what John is doing with the self-description, that'd be fantastic. Carl.
Hi, I'm Carl Burnett, COBAC Vice Chair. I'm attending online today. I'm wearing a plaid shirt and glasses and glad to be here.
Thank you. Aaron.
Hi, I'm Aaron Rivers. I'm wearing a gray sweatshirt and have a tan background behind me.
Amanda.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Hamer. I'm in transition right now, but I'm because I have to go pick up a kiddo from school unexpectedly. So I'm not on video so that I don't make anyone sick. I am wearing a purple jacket. I go by she, her pronouns, and I have wet hair because I just got out of the shower.
Thanks, Amanda. Stephanie. She'll be late. Great. Liz Woodfin. Derek.
Hi, I'm Derek Hoffbauer, he, him pronouns, sitting next to John, wearing a plaid button down long sleeve shirt, sleeves rolled up.
Thank you. Corey.
Hi, I'm Corey Sparks. I use she, her pronouns. I have blonde hair and a ponytail and a blue sweater on and cute gold rim glasses.
Liz.
Hi, I'm Liz Deetha Martin. I am attending online today. I who was it? Who also just got out of the shower with wet auburn hair. I go by she, her, and I'm wearing a sweater with vertical stripes.
Thank you. Nicholas.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicholas Radin. I go by he, him, and I am wearing and I'm online today, and I'm wearing a gray sweatshirt with a Bend Elks hat and a salt and pepper beard.
Thank you. And Whitney.
She won't be here today.
Okay.
Okay, I'll do the land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge that the beautiful land known as Bend, Oregon, north to the Columbia River, is the original homelands of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. The Confederated Tribes ceded this land in the Treaty of 1855 while retaining regular and customary hunting, fishing, and gathering rights. The Wanalama, Warm Springs, Wasco, and Northern Paiute people inhabited this area in certain seasonal times that clearly established their presence. It is also important to note that the Klamath Trail ran north through this region to the Great Celilo Falls trading grounds. This trade route expanded the impact of commerce between tribal nations. We acknowledge and thank the original stewards of this land. It is our hope that guests continue to honor and care for this land. Okay, we'll move on to the approval of the July 27, 2023 draft minutes. Is there a motion to approve? Are there any corrections?
I'll motion to approve. This is Amanda.
All in favor? Aye, or raise your hand.
Hi.
Hi.
Motion passes. Now we have 4 minutes for public comment. Is there any member of the public here who would like to say anything or online?
There's no one online.
Okay. We'll move on to item number 5, service request system presentation.
Lisa, can you hear us in the mic?
His mic?
The mic on the table, is it coming through? Okay.
It's a little on the quiet side.
Carl, is this better?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Sorry, Lisa, can you give me access to control the screen?
Isn't there, it should be share screen. At the bottom, yeah, at the bottom.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stephanie Betteridge. I'm one of the assistant city managers for the city, and I am thrilled to be in front of you today to share an update on BendWorks, which is our community service request system. This is something that we've talked about for probably the last 6 months on and off in these meetings. And I'm thrilled to be here to give you an update on when we're planning to go live, and then to give a tour of our new community service request system, and then have an opportunity for you to provide some general feedback on how do you see this really working to support the work of COBAC, meeting the needs of our community members, and perhaps even providing us with a couple of suggestions on some minor modifications that we can make to this valuable tool to make sure that it's really aligned with the needs and expectations of our community. And I guess I skipped over my introduction and description. So I am sitting in council chambers next to John Condon, who leads our project management office. Today, we are sitting at the presentation table, looking at our COBAC and staff who are sitting at the dais. I have brown hair, wearing a burgundy shirt today and wrapped in a gray shawl because it's feeling a little fall-like and chilly. So the BendWorks Community Service Request System was part of the last set of council's biennial goals. And it was part of one of the actions around making sure that we are providing accessible and effective city government services to our community, with a specific project aimed around using human-centered design to improve our city website and customer service. We see this as touching on both of those actions. One, because this will be part of the city's website, but two, because it really provides that better quality customer service. And I'll be touching on what that looks like in just a few moments. You may be wondering, what is human-centered design? Why is this important to council? Why is this part of this project? And to really at the core, human-centered design is making sure that you're engaging with the people who are using the service, the product, the policy, the program, as you design and develop it. So John will talk in a little bit about how we've engaged with community to make sure that this works for our community members, to tell us about issues within community that we need to address. And then we'll also be carrying that through to today's conversation and asking all of you to provide some feedback to us as part of that. I did want to just provide a little update on the other components of this action item. You can see on the screen, and I mentioned that we're also making improvements to the city's website. So we, over the past 12 months or so, have done a lot of community engagement. We've asked community members, what's working with the website? Are you able to access the information and services that you need to? Is it intuitive? How can we better present the information to you? And so a number of improvements have been made already. We've done a huge content audit to say, what information does community and the public really need on our website? And focusing in on those key pieces of information and getting rid of some of the clutter. We've also been working to make sure that the information is presented in ways that's easy for our community members to understand and that it's accessible. So Lisa and Cassandra have been key in helping with that effort as well. And then the next council meeting, we'll be sharing with council how we're updating the navigation for that. So again, our website may not always be intuitive for all of our users. We want to address that so people can quickly find the information that they need. Or that access the services that they need to access. And so those efforts will be underway over the next few months. We're also making sure that it is mobile friendly, and we're taking a mobile first approach. We know that the majority of people access the city's website from their mobile device. So we want to make sure that, again, it's easy to use and meets their needs from that perspective. So BendWorks, what is this BendWorks? What is this community service request system that we've been talking about for a while now? It is a quick and easy way for community members to make non-emergency service requests to the city. So it's really important to reiterate that non-emergency piece of it. This is not for, I need help right now with the situation. I need police, I need fire to respond to something. This is really about those standard requests that you, or questions that you have for the city. It's replacing an existing web form that's pretty basic and doesn't allow for a two-way dialogue between community members and the city. And it has both the web form as well as a mobile application. Again, going back to how do people communicate? How do you consume information? How do you want to interact with your government? We know for most people, it's through a mobile device. We also know that not everybody has technology or is comfortable using technology. And so it was really important as we approached this project that we made sure that there's a mechanism for those to call the city or to walk in and share with us an issue that they're seeing in community and they would like us to address. So we have workflows in process to accommodate that as well. One of the big benefits or multiple benefits that we see with this new platform is engagement and transparency. And again, that's going back to the human-centered approach. We want to make sure that this is a tool that's meeting your needs and expectations. So with our previous ways of reporting requests to the city, it was usually a one-way dialogue. Somebody would call the city, they would email, they would put a request through a form, it would go to a staff person. The person who submitted it would not hear back. You wouldn't know what the status was. You wouldn't know if that pothole was going to get filled. You wouldn't know if we, when we were going to go out and trim the vegetation, when we were going to address the sidewalk issue that you reported. So this provides a way for you to track the status of your service request. It also provides the ability for city staff to ask follow-up questions. If we don't have enough information to quickly address it, then we can say, hey, John, can you please provide more information on this pothole that's in front of your house? It also provides transparency to the rest of the community. So with a few exceptions, all of these service requests will be available for all public to see. So you can see what's happening around in your neighborhood. And then on the back end, something that's really important for us to be able to provide those effective and efficient services, it has improved workflow. So it gets the request to the right staff person in a quick and timely manner so that we can focus our energy on addressing that instead of sending emails around and getting it to the right person. And then there's a reporting functionality that's incredibly valuable to us. So it gives us both spatial and time related reporting on where are things happening in community. So we can look for patterns and trends, and then we can use that information to allocate our resources, change our processes, but also to share information. If we're getting a lot of questions on something, that's a great opportunity for us to do proactive communication with community. So a lot of benefit. You probably just want to see what it looks like. That's the most exciting part. So I'm going to turn it over to John.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. And good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Condon. Today I'm wearing a blue button-up shirt. As Stephanie mentioned, I manage the project management office at the City of Bend. I'm going to walk through a demonstration today of this new BendWorks software. As Stephanie mentioned, it's both on the web and mobile app. And we thought it'd be fun to demonstrate the mobile app since that's brand new functionality. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Looks like it works, which is going through my computer and my phone. So there may be a little bit of a lag. But I'm going to walk through a few features of the system. If there are any questions, comments, please feel free to raise your hand and I'm happy to address those. And at the end, open to any questions, comments as well. And Lisa has all my information. So if there's anything afterward, please reach out and you can follow up. So getting into the demonstration, this is the screen that people will see when they open the app, BendWorks. It'll be available both through the Google App Store and the Apple App Store. We've been able to add a few links here. City of Bend website, call the City of Bend news, file a police report online, and sign up for emergency alerts. These are all things that function outside the app. And the software that we've purchased, but they provide additional information for the community to access services through the City of Bend, where this app may not be the appropriate place. We also have the ability to update these on a regular basis. As Stephanie mentioned, if we're getting a lot of questions from the community, we can provide information here. If there are seasonal things like a snowstorm or some sort of emergency, we can put information right here on the home screen for the community to get access. Stephanie also mentioned there is an ability to see what's happening around town throughout the community. Just wait for it, but it will show a map of the city of Bend with all the requests across the community that people have submitted. And it will provide status. You can click on, it will show little pins in a second here.
Is it anonymous?
Yeah, it is anonymous. So we can configure request types. So some will be private, as Stephanie mentioned, where if you're asking a very personal question, like, hey, I have a question on my water bill, that won't be public at all. These questions where I'm reporting a pothole, will be anonymous.
Will be public.
Or sorry, public.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, great question, John. We, in order for us to be able to have dialogue with those who are submitting requests, we do require that you, for the most part, that you sign up for an account and then your requests are tied to that. That allows us to provide you with status updates. It allows us to ask questions of you and for you to be able to track the kind of what's happening with your request. As John was mentioning, we do allow a couple of service request types to be private just because they're not conducive to including a name with it. There may also be privacy concerns. And so we've been really thoughtful about which request types are public, which ones are private. And you'll see that as you explore the system.
I guess I'm just wondering if I report my neighbor for a broken sidewalk, if they're gonna know it was me.
There are certain request types where we do withhold that. That said, as we do outreach and communication for this new app, we are reminding community members that as public, there are public records considerations to take into account. As you set up your user account, you may not want to use your full name. You may want to have something that is less identifiable unless you do want people to know that you're submitting service requests, and absolutely see the value in that as well. So there's going to be a lot of information that goes out alongside this. But if there are any requests where we feel there may be a situation where there could be concerns about retribution with somebody submitting a specific service request type, we've made sure to make that a request type where your name is not tied to it and it's not visible publicly. One thing that John didn't mention, and I just want to make sure that our community knows, the app is no charge. It's really important for us that this is available to everyone.
I'll also add, you can choose whatever name you want to use within the system. So like any other, web applications, you can make up an alias for yourself. So if you don't want it to be your real name, you can absolutely make up.
I could put in like the sidewalk bandit.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I may switch over to the web version because there's quite a bit of lag between my phone and the screen, but this is that screen that shows all the requests around town that have been submitted. Of course, right now, all these are imaginary. We've been testing the system, but it gives you a sense of what you'll see. You can click on any of these. I'm going to click on one we created this morning with utilities. That is a question around, and actually we were testing if utilities could use a system to post information to the community, and the example we used was if there's a water shutoff for a project, they may elect to post that to this map, so community members can also go in there and see, oh, the water's going to be shut off Friday starting at 8 a.m. And get updates. So at 2 p.m. when the water is turned back on, you can see the updates on the system.
I received that notice today.
Oh, okay. Excellent. So things are working.
Yes.
And I think at this point, okay, so there it popped up. And so this is the information that anyone in the community who uses this app will be able to see, that a request or this service was submitted, there's no water, and then can see the communication back and forth between the person who submitted and the city staff who's managing the system. And I think I'm going to go ahead and switch to the web version because there's quite a bit of lag there. So please bear with me. Again, the two interfaces are nearly identical from this point on. It's really that initial home screen that is different.
So is the public able to comment on things? Like that water service alert? This is Liz.
Yeah.
From,
So Liz, the way that it's currently configured is you can only comment on requests that you've submitted. So
that's good, because you probably don't want to.
if you submitted something and you're like, oh, I wish I would have told you this, or I'm not seeing the rest, you can comment on it.
Uh-huh.
But you can also follow requests. So if you see something happening in the community and it's of interest to you, you can follow, and then you'll receive updates as that request is being addressed.
Okay.
Great question. So again, this is the web version, virtually identical to the mobile app version. Users will be presented with a map of the city of Bend where they can zoom and pan to the location of the request. On the mobile app, you can also select this button to identify your location. And so it will use the GPS in your mobile device to locate you. I'm going to select a random location. And then a list of available service types appears. So we've categorized these into a number of categories: streets and sidewalks at the top. Scrolling down, next is water services, water, sewer, stormwater, followed by just general service requests. So fire department, garbage, police, and general requests. Again, this is still in the works of being configured. There may be some errors in here. As you can see, we have general service requests and other. That would be very confusing. We'll be working to clean that up prior to launch. From this point, I'm gonna just walk you through. I'm gonna select the ADA barrier removal task. And so if someone sees that there's a barrier on the sidewalk, they can select that task. There's an option to add a photo. Again, this will bring up the camera on your phone if you'd
Is
like.
there a size limit to the photo?
None that I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. If someone's trying to submit a photo that's, several gigabytes, there may be, but yeah, there's no common restriction to that.
Okay.
Or practical restriction.
Could we as a committee get reports off of this for any accessibility issues?
Yeah, this system has quite a bit of reporting capacity. I'm not sure how exactly to get those reports to the committee, but those reports will be available. And as we collect data, we'll be making sure that those are available to this committee as well as others, to council, neighborhood associations, a variety of groups across the community who would like to see this information.
This is Carl. That sounds great. In fact, it might be nice to, once this is up and running, establish kind of a regular cadence for that, so that there's a particular report that contains information that this committee's interested in, that just gets maybe automatically sent to us every month or something like that.
Yeah.
This is Cassandra. Just to let you know, so we would redact any kind of information that, while it would be part of the public record, would not be within the purview of COBAC. But I think that's a great suggestion, and I'll make sure to make note of that, and we'll collect the information and disperse it and share it with members.
Perfect.
Thanks. Yeah, I think de-identified is fine, but it would just be nice to have a summary. There were this many sidewalk repair requests last month, and this many of them got fixed, or numbers like that.
Yeah, and I think for us, just let us know what information you are interested in tracking. There will be a lot of information coming out of this. For example, fire alarm service requests. I'm going to assume that's not information this group would be interested in. So maybe provide that to Cassandra, and we can work with her to make sure that we're collecting the information that's relevant to this group.
Yeah, initially, it's probably just the barrier removal, but there may be others that we discover as we use this.
Absolutely. And, once we've been live for a while and have some of that data collected, we can certainly come back and share what reporting capabilities are available if there are people who are interested.
This is Derek. What's your staff capacity to be able to kind of field all the questions? Because it seems like you're going to get a lot of inquiries. Is that all human inputted? Are there kind of auto responses that can be tailored to help with the efficiency of it?
Yeah, great question. My team will not be doing that. We're responsible for the rollout and implementation of software, but we are working with all the departments, streets, fire, police. Most of those departments are already doing that today with web forms, phone calls, a variety of sources where information come. They'll continue to do that. This system does provide an improved degree of automation where we can have prepared responses. We can provide information through this tool that will provide some efficiencies. It is still a pretty significant workload
Right.
to provide customized responses and updates to the community. But we also see that as a real value to the community.
Yeah, and then is this in addition to all of the other systems that are already in place, or will this slowly kind of be the system in the future?
The only one this will replace is the web form
Okay.
that Stephanie mentioned. It's a tool that doesn't provide a lot of functionality, and we'll have a new web form through this. But yeah, every other means of submitting a request will still exist.
Yeah, and my last question is, did you guys outsource the app development on it, or did you build it in-house?
Yeah, great question. This is a company who has been in the business of providing this app for a long time. They do it for many cities, counties, parks departments across the country.
Great.
Yeah, I don't have a number, but I would wager it's in the hundreds at least. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions before I move on through the demonstration? So as a reminder, we just came off the photo. The community member will select a location, choose a request. They have the opportunity to upload a photo or skip that step. And then we have a place for them to type a description of what the concern is, the issue is, the question. On this particular one, we ask, do you have a disability yourself because it is ADA barrier removal, or are they reporting on behalf of someone else? And then this will be submitted. Again, that will show up on the map of all the requests across the community. And then this will go to an individual in our streets department who will prepare the appropriate response based on the response to all of these questions and the descriptions provided. And then as we move through completing the work, assuming, okay, we validated, yes, this work needs to be done. It is a valid ADA barrier removal. City crews will then work to complete that work just as we do today under the existing timelines that we have in place to complete that work. Anything to add, Stephanie?
Looks like we have Nicholas online has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is Nicholas Radin. For this, it says, do you have a disability yourself required not displayed publicly? Just from reading that, it seems that it sounds like it's required to have a disability to do that versus a required input. If I'm how I'm reading it, but maybe that's just me.
Nick, thank you. That is great feedback. We will see if we have the ability to change that language. If not, we can put in some additional text to provide clarity for those who are submitting service requests. The intent there is to make sure that that, as you know, ADA barrier removal requests require that they're submitted on behalf of someone who has a disability or by someone who has a disability. And if it doesn't meet those requirements, then it gets routed a different way because it's not an ADA barrier removal request. It would be a sidewalk request or a code compliance issue. So that's helping us to get there. But what this raises an important point is that it says not displayed publicly. Again, this is where we're really working to ensure that privacy is maintained where it's needed. And so this is a service request type that would not be published publicly on the web and app version of the service request tool.
Carl?
Thank you.
Yeah, I wonder if any thought went into exactly what to call this type of request. Believe it or not, not everybody knows what the ADA is. But also, there are other laws relating to public accessibility besides the ADA that might be in play here. Section 504, maybe some state laws or city code. I wonder whether it makes more sense just to call this something like accessibility barrier request or barrier to access or something like that.
Yeah, I think that was great feedback. And we definitely did talk about how to name all these and want to make sure it was something that resonated with the community. And so I really appreciate that feedback, Carl.
Yeah, I mean, in recent years, ADA has come to be shorthand for accessibility in the United States, which is kind of interesting to me. Sometimes it makes me chuckle a little bit, like when I hear something referred to as like an ADA bathroom. It's a bathroom that's accessible, but why there's the name of a particular law in it is a little odd.
Yeah, absolutely. Great feedback. Thank you, Carl. And we'll address that.
Yep, this is Cassandra. If I could just add in there, Carl, that's wonderful feedback, very true. Why we continue to push for ideas of universal design, that all of these accessible places are for all of us and not just for individuals with disabilities. Specific to the mention of the title of ADA barrier removal, I think we're required federally for the city to have that statement made and for the form, and that's why we have those precursors to require the individual to have a disability themselves or to be submitting on behalf of an individual with a disability. But I do think there could be a different subcategory or something that would say accessibility question or something at that top line. Great feedback.
I have a question or a clarifying question. This is Corey. I suppose a few things. When it is an ADA barrier removal, just somebody who's disabled or on behalf of, does that change the priority of the request? And I guess it sounds like it is included in the law or required in the law that it's submitted on behalf of it or a disabled person or somebody on behalf of. That's very strange to me, basically. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't necessarily self-identify as disabled, though they might have very legitimate accessibility concerns, or that, see something that is would be considered an ADA barrier removal, regardless of who reports it. So that's kind of strange to me, I guess. But does it change the priority, I suppose?
Yeah. So this is Cassandra. That's prescribed by federal law. So it does have those kinds of questions. And the reason that they do have ADA barrier removal requests is the way that the city is able to categorically store, look at information, provide it if potentially the Department of Justice intervenes to ask, like, what are our policies? How are we doing as a city? And the way that we keep that information available to folks. To the second point of your question, Corey, about kind of the way that it's treated, it's treated distinctly from other kinds of requests. For instance, if something went to streets or if something went to a different department like utilities. So it's kept distinct to be able to track it so that we are accountable as a city to be able to say, these kinds of requests come in, this is what we do with them. And these are the kinds of ways that we're committed to making sure that they happen. And we do have, from a construction perspective, we do have funds set aside specifically for accessibility concerns. So that is all weighed very carefully by different departments when they're looking at the budget, what's available, the scope of the work, if there's work that's nearby or maybe accessible or easily kind of used together. So it's a little intricate. Appreciate the question greatly though, because it is nuanced and it doesn't always make sense facially.
Yeah, another follow-up to that is if a request or multiple requests for the same thing are deemed to be ADA related, does that move them into a different category?
I think that or go ahead, finish your.
I suppose if people who are disabled and non-disabled report things. So, if there's one particular thing and there's several reports from disabled people and several from non-disabled people, just what does that look like, I suppose?
I think it would just be case by case. I think specifically to the reporting function and making sure that we're tracking for our compliance. It would be something where maybe part of it would be routed to us and then for the specific accessibility funds available. Right. But for the totality and the whole of everyone, again, that universal design concept, we'd like to try to address that as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're getting close to the end of the presentation time. Please continue.
And that really actually concludes the demonstration of the system. So at this point, if there are any other questions on the system, the schedule, et cetera, we're open to answer.
Just one quick question from me, John. Do you have the ability to combine complaints? Like if everyone, so that way you're not sending 20 different emails to the same pothole complaint?
Yeah, great question. And I didn't address that. So yeah, if we're getting, like you said, 20 complaints on one pothole, the system will actually automatically ask, hey, there's another pothole in this area. Is this the same one or is this different? So automatically we'll do that. And then we also have the ability to manually combine and say, oh, this is all one request. Everyone who has submitted on that request is now getting notices on that initial request with updates.
Do people get badges for submitting, you know?
Not yet, but we can look into that.
I see that Carl's got his hand up online.
Yeah, this is not going to be a technology related question, so I'm not sure if there's somebody who's able to answer this at the moment, but I'm wondering, with the form that we have now for barrier removal, whether we tend to see requests that are not related to streets and sidewalks, even though we know that that's sort of the scope of this type of request. Like, do we see barrier removal requests relating to private businesses or homes, or I don't know, other things that are not streets and sidewalks? And then what happens when to those? Do they just say, sorry, we can't help you, or does it somehow get forwarded to a different agency or person?
I'll jump in, Carl. This is Cassandra. So essentially, when a barrier removal request is submitted, Lisa and I are notified of it. We identify who within the city or what department it should be forwarded to, if it's appropriate jurisdiction. So it's got to be something where the city has the jurisdiction to be able to remedy the request. And when it is a private, this is a really great point. When it is a private residence or something the city is not able to do anything about, we're still looking for a formula for figuring out how we provide that feedback to businesses or places, encourage them to remedy their issues and to get in alignment with the ADA. But we have no jurisdiction to be able to tell them that. We can show them and hope to practice. And I'm really excited to have a community member here who's going to be presenting right after regarding this very subject. So great thoughts. And we look to continue to work on that.
Yeah, that's something I'd love to talk about more as a committee. So we'll sidebar that. Thanks.
So just in closing, thank you so much for your interest in this valuable new tool that we're rolling out to community for your feedback today. We are planning to do a soft launch in mid-October. So if you are interested in being part of that soft launch, please let Lisa know and she can pass your email on to us, and then we can send you information and links to downloading the app as well as to the city's webpage that will have the web portal.
Excellent.
You see,
Thank you.
Liz has got one question, I think.
Oh, yeah, I think maybe that's the same way to deal with, I would love for one or two of us to get a look at what the reporting feature, reporting options are, and see if we can sit down with you and kind of figure out, these are the ones that this committee would be interested in. It's not just, what's an ADA barrier, and that's, those are terms that maybe are not human-centered, as noted. But other things, like if there's any, I've worked with reporting software before, so yeah, can I use it by a term? Can I search for a term and get a report based on that term? So if we could, but it's a lot easier for us to know what's possible if we actually see the reporting tool. Yeah, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, up next, we have community member testimony.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kayla Wappets, and I'm going to just read something that I prepared that may have been forwarded or may be forwarded to you. I'm Kayla Wappets, gray shirt, wheelchair user. I'm here today to talk about the property at 21175 Southeast Reed Market Road, a part of new South Reed development and currently occupied by Cascade Lakes Pub and owned by Ryan Spencer LLC. I want to take a minute to talk about my excitement for this new development and for Cascade Lakes Brewery to open a location there. I had been excited to hear and follow Cascade Lakes Brewery transition to nonprofit status, and I'm a huge fan of what that resource can do for our community. Numerous media outlets covered the building's launch as the first ever Bend rooftop bar and what this unique space will bring to the Bend Southeast, which is where I live with my family. I was particularly encouraged to see Andrew Ryan, the current general manager of Cascade Lakes Brewing, and I'm assuming part of building ownership group given the namesake, speak directly to the rooftop bar area as a quote, communal space available for fundraisers for both their nonprofit and nonprofit partners. I've worked for several nonprofits here in Bend. I have founded one myself, and I'm deeply entrenched in the fundraising events in this community. The anticipation for this new space on a personal and philanthropic level was very, very high. On August 1st, my family and I went to visit the brew pub for the first time. At the time of our visit, there were no accessible indoor seating options as all tables were high tops or raised booths. When we arrived, we looked for the elevator to go up to the anticipated and hyped rooftop bar. After being unable to locate one, we asked where it was located, at which point we were told there was not one. As a wheelchair user with a degenerative neurological condition, I'm not able to do long flights of stairs safely. I was both disappointed that I couldn't join the rooftop and more than a bit embarrassed to request my family and friends relocate downstairs because I was unable to join them. We ended up eating downstairs and I was able to transfer with some difficulty into a raised booth. We have not returned since to see if the lower level seating issues have been addressed, so they may have at this time. And as it appeared, to be early in its opening, we're hopeful that this was just some transitional layouts while the final layout was finalized, but we're unsure. However, based on my knowledge of the American with Disabilities Act or the ADA, I thought the absence of an elevator wasn't legal. So following our visit, I reached out to the city accessibility email and was put in contact with Brad Mendel, who was extremely helpful tracking down the associated building codes. He noted that the building code applicable to this project is the 2019 Oregon Structure Specialty Code, section 1104.4, which states the following, and the one you have, it's a full complete. I'm going to try and paraphrase because they're, as you all know, long. So it states multi-story buildings and facilities have to have at least one accessible route. And there is an exception, and the exception number 5 listed is what applies here, that in private buildings or facilities that are less than 3 stories that have less than 3,000 square feet per story, they don't require an accessible route. So I then followed up and questioned because I cited the ADA Title III, section 206.2.5 about restaurants and cafeterias, which essentially states that people should have access to all unique spaces and the same types of environment and services. And then ORS 447.247, which states that elevators are required. I'm going to try and jump to point B. Commercial facilities, private entities, and places of public accommodation covered by Title III, which restaurants are, of the ADA that have more than 1 floor level and more than 3,000 square feet in the ground area, which does apply in this particular location. Because Mr. Mendel and I were both a little bit unsure of which code trumps the other, he escalated the question to help us both get clarity and reached out to Tony Rocco at OBCD, whose response I've documented. But the very short version is that the original exception for 1104.4 does apply, and this particular facility is not required to have an elevator by building code. If all of this sounds confusing, it's because it is. The takeaway message here, I think, is that while the ADA recognizes the importance of having unique spaces in all areas of a restaurant accessible, the Oregon Code as it stands allows the establishment in question to pass existing code because the second story, the rooftop bar, and the proposed communal space is only 2,300 square feet instead of 3,000 square feet. And therefore that meets the exception in code 1104.4. So here we have a situation where the ADA grapples with the balance between cost effectiveness for businesses and accessibility for community members. Accessibility clauses in the ADA, like Title III, Section 206.2.5, that focus on having accessible spaces and routes in all distinct and unique spaces of a building, are designed with the intention of preventing a separate but equal scenario. It is not sufficient for restaurants to only have accessible seating, but to have accessible seating that allows participation in the same spaces and experiences as other community members. And I'm sure we all acknowledge why this is an important feature of the ADA. However, there is a place for building exceptions that are understandable. Exceptions are derived from the desire to prevent barriers for small businesses and small builds to create financially successful spaces and to not overburden small space buildouts with excessive costs, like an elevator. I understand that having all spaces, my question to all of you is, does this financial burden exist in a large development with multiple buildings such as Reed South, where the developers are not the small business scenario intended for this exception? I understand that having all spaces accessible is a big ask. Renovating existing structures is costly and with historic properties at time an unreasonable expectation. Those of us with mobility issues understand this and live with this every day. There are many businesses that I can't access or places that I can't live in this town as a wheelchair user myself. And while that doesn't feel great, I understand the burden it would put on small businesses and historic properties to remedy it, and therefore don't expect it. However, to visit a brand new building and not be able to join my friends and family for a meal due to an inaccessible route and lack of elevator to a vista is shocking, embarrassing, frustrating, and very demoralizing. This is not just an issue for wheelchair users. My father, for example, who is not a wheelchair user and whose mobility issues stem solely from age, he could not ascend the stairs at this location, and he also could not join the rooftop bar. The marketed rooftop bar, first of its kind in Bend and a space intended for positive use to support community nonprofits, is thus blocked from many of its community members. So I urge this committee and the city to consider the intent in which these exceptions to the ADA are written and to review situations where the intent may not match the build at hand, and consider ways as a city we can maximize accessibility while still maintaining the consideration for small business owner needs. I will be reaching out to Mr. Ryan to ask him to consider ways in which the space may be modified to genuinely serve the community in the ways it has been marketed. I understand that unless you've had a mobility limitation, these situations are not always top of mind. Accessibility is absolutely something that, unless you know from experience, can be easily and accidentally overlooked. And I'm looking forward to assisting in any way I can help this space reach its full potential. So I want to thank you all for your time and happy to answer any questions.
That was wonderful. Thank you. I've heard similar complaints from friends of mine who are unable to access the rooftop, and they're just like, how did this even get approved? They are confused as well. It's awful.
Yeah, it definitely in a new build was a very unexpected and
Yeah.
surprising experience.
Yeah.
Something we expect from older buildings quite frequently, but yeah.
This is Corey speaking. I don't really have a question, but I wanted to just say thanks for sharing that. I completely agree. It is very shocking that a new build would not consider that, even if they do have an exception to the code. It's callous at worst and just thoughtless at best. And it is, I do notice things like this a lot where I'm like, oh, there's no automatic door here, or, whatever it is, you have to go through something very narrow or whatever it is that people somehow get all the way through the process without it being noticed or thought about. And buildings having to go back and alter their bathrooms and things. And I'm like, well, it is pretty amazing to me. So I just wanted to share that. I agree. And I am curious to know what your conversations are like with them. Very disappointed in them.
I'll add one thing. This is Derek. Just want to commend you for coming here and sharing your story. And I think, as a community, there's ADA and then there's above and beyond ADA. And I think we should take those things in consideration that, if the square footage is underneath, we should strive to do better and provide accessible amenities for community members. So thank you for sharing your story.
Absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely a shortcoming of the ADA and a lot of building codes, right? Is compliance is never true accessibility. And for a reason, because there's times where being thoughtful of exceptions makes sense. So I think I don't know what steps there are to help the process, but having something that's a little bit more nuanced to see if a organization actually meets an exception or the intent of the exception, right? Would be great. I know building codes aren't known for nuance, but
This is Cassandra. Kayla, I just want to sincerely thank you for coming, first of all, for contacting the city, escalating to the right people, and then also just for having the conversation with Lisa and myself. I think for Koback, one of the great opportunities that we have after listening to this testimony is seeing if this is something we'd like to incorporate into our work plan in the ways that we're able to advocate. And I think the question from Carl earlier, right? What do we do when we don't have jurisdiction? What do we do when we don't have it? We have the capacity to advocate on behalf of community members and with community members. And thank you very much for being here for that.
I've got here late, everybody. I'm sorry. I'm Barb Campbell. I serve on city council. I'm temporarily able-bodied. As you mentioned, each and every single one of us is going to have trouble getting up to that rooftop deck.
yes,
At
we're all
some point-
pre-disabled, right?
Right,
true.
right.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Your testimony is really impactful, and this, I appreciate that you acknowledge what a difficult space this is with small businesses. Genuinely, thank you for your time in your presentation. And no, this is just awful. I'm really sorry that this has happened to you and your family.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Not just you, but the community at large.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Kayla.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 7. Equity conversation and definition.
Perfect. Thank you so much. My name is Andres Portela. My pronouns are he, him. I am a Black man with cocoa brown skin, clear glasses, and a beautiful black afro. Let's start this conversation off, and hopefully this is a conversation, two-way dialogue. All of us, even including the folks online, feel like they have a stake in this conversation. Inside the reason why I'm here, inside the city of Bend, the organization itself, accessibility resides within the equity department. And that is amazing foresight. I think when folks think about accessibility, it's largely in the space of compliance, not into forethought and vision, which usually is what gets coupled with equity. And so I'm grateful that we're all in this space because we get to start thinking about equitable access. In this conversation that we're having, and I'm not sure why Zoom isn't allowing me to pull up my presentation, but in this conversation, I'm going to be talking about the equitable part of access. And so I'm here because I need your help. And in that, we're gonna start off with a conversation around language. So let's start off like this. Let's start off with a poll. I'm going to use Menti. So for those folks online and using personal computers, they can use menti.com. For those folks in person, if you have a smartphone, if you don't mind scanning the QR code or using menti.com and entering the code 8208-8651. And in this, we are going to engage in an interactive process where we reflect on a time when you felt included. Use one word to associate with that and share it. And so once you're on Menti, a box will pop up. You'll be able to type in your response, and then we'll be able to see it displayed live. Any questions about that? Yeah, I can help.
Thanks.
Some of the things being displayed right now is you'll see the Menti poll, but you'll also see a wonderful photo of the Welcoming Week celebration. Cassandra, I'm pretty sure will give us an update on that towards the end of this. It was a wonderful week of letting folks know they are welcome within our community. And LCA at the tail end of the week did a wonderful community gathering, Latino Community Association, in which is seen photographed here with the beautiful dress and some traditional dancing that took place at that event. And just to talk about some of the reflections that were put up, some folks said belonging, safe, comfortable, engaged, eyes, laughter, smiles. This is in my way, so I can't see it. Education, important. And if you want to throw another response in there, feel free. I'm going to move forward. And when I move forward, you'll see a sign that'll take a notification that says go to the next board. This will be used in a later conversation, and I'll detail that in just a few seconds. So if you hit next on your smartphones or computer, you'll get our next prompt. How do you bring that being the previous stated value to this committee? And on the right-hand side of this slide, you will see some of the folks that put on our Welcoming Week kickoff, and that is y'all. Thank you so much for assisting in the creation, the application, all of the things that went into Welcoming Week. It was amazing to see some of the faces that are in this space all coming out to kick off our Welcoming Week celebration that took place just a few weeks ago. All right, we have a few responses. So the responses I'm seeing, I'll start with rereading the prompt and then saying them. So how do you bring that previously stated value to this committee? Invite everyone to participate by being an advocate for other disabled people in Bend. Unconditional positive regard. Welcoming everyone and treat others like they have amazing information I'll want to learn. Representing underserved. Knowing my voice will be heard. Non-judgmental interaction. Those are wonderful and beautiful. Thank you so much. Be welcoming for everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward in this conversation. Later, these responses will be used in a presentation to council. I am a big person on using qualitative analysis and in our department, equity and inclusion. And so the prompt that you just helped me out with is how we start talking about inclusion and how do we bring it into these formalized spaces in government. So the first part of this conversation is really telling you I'm here to create shared language. We are going to be defining words together. The reason why defining words together is extremely important is my reality. My reality is I came from a bilingual household. Everything that was stated, we had to understand the importance of syntax, the command of language. That way everyone was on the same page. The reality that we're in right now is we want to prevent misunderstanding and divergent objectives. And at worst, erode trust. I think I'm grateful each one of you are in this space. What I do want to do is create a relationship that is rooted in trust. So how do we do that? We create a starting point where everyone can jump in and everyone can feel like they have a vested interest in this process. And one thing that I want to bring up is another lived experience that I have around one of my really good friends, Matt, who was formerly incarcerated. Matt was incarcerated for 20 years. And when he came out, he always heard, well, inside, he always heard the word accountability, 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 accountability. And it was always to remind him that he was incarcerated specifically to be held accountable. So when he came out and he was interacting with government systems, he kept hearing the word accountability, accountability, accountability. And he had always associated accountability with punitive and not regenerative, not thinking about how do we promote transparency. And so throughout this conversation, you're going to hear me talk about some words and being very specific on how and why we use them for this reason. So I'll talk about the process of the decision we're about to make. You're about to see some definitions, and can we pass this to the left? In the folks online, you're going to see these definitions as well. Okay, you received it via email. Perfect. Those definitions will start here and at HREC. I did the amazing work, not I, but my team and I did the amazing work of whittling down and creating a funnel based on feedback we received from the community, some studies that were shared with us. We whittled it down while also looking at some peer-reviewed information around the word equity. And we looked at the equity plan given to us by council, which I'll share some of the objectives that came up. And we said, well, how do we define that? We've never gone through the process of defining equity. That way we can start associating it in different places and build a level of understanding. In that, we will take our definition of equity from us, equity department, feedback from y'all, and we'll share it with council. And council will ultimately say, hey, we want to adopt this as our working definition of equity, and it will be shared with the community. That way we have a baseline of understanding. And I'll be able to report back to you the definition that we choose, and that way we can start to include our shared language within our respective spaces. And so here are the council goals, specifically around a framework, then to implement a supplier diversity program, to focus on discrimination and then create those resources. And then additionally to create a language access policy and program. And here are the definitions we're going to be making some decisions around. And so I present to you 3 different definitions. The first one being working towards fair outcomes for people or groups by treating them in ways that address their unique advantages or barriers. And that comes from OHU, language and inclusion. The second definition ensures that outcomes and the conditions of well-being are improved for marginalized groups, lifting outcomes for all. Equity is a measurement of justice, and that's from Race Forward. So that's a national organization. Definition number 3, it has 2 parts. 1, the presence of well-being and success across all groups. And 2, the absence of discrimination and mistreatment for all groups. And that comes from Lily Zhang. DEI Deconstructed is their book, and is a part of national practitioners who have also adopted these definitions. What I want to do today is I shared them previously before the meeting, and I know this may be hard to make a decision immediately, so we do not need to. But what I want to do is put this in front of us and say, let's have a discussion around semantics, around language. So let's start this conversation now. What are some of the things that are popping out to us specifically around the 3 definitions? Anything resonating with our heart, our mind?
This is Corey. Something that always pops out to me with talking about equity, and there are some pieces in here that kind of speak to this, but it always feels like the idea of inequity is like a very passive thing that just exists, like rather than it being intentionally perpetrated, I guess, by someone, or that inequities exist because of like an active, it's active, basically. It's not just there and then people need to be empowered to deal with it. So yeah, I find that really interesting, because also it seems that there's some kind of like focus on people who experience oppression, rather than also addressing the people who benefit very much from it and trying to address that as well.
Yeah, thank you.
I would piggyback on what Corey said. This is Liz online, Liz Diether Martin. I forget that there's 2 of us. But looking at the definitions, the first one seems the least challenging, the most vague and the least challenging. It doesn't name the barriers, it doesn't name the issues, and the other two get more into that. Now, there's a risk of you're not including everyone, so it makes it challenging to not have a page-long definition. But yeah, the definition 2 and 3, they look a little bit more complicated because yes, they kind of name names. That's all I'm gonna say for now.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is John. I guess with definition 1, it's like you can read it and agree with it, but it also seems kind of defeatist because it's like, oh yeah, the system's broken and we'll just adapt to the broken system, meanwhile not addressing the broken system. So kind of touching on what Liz was saying. So I get it and it makes sense, but it just seems very I don't know, depressing. Like
Yeah. Thank you, John.
Yeah, and this is Derek. I mean, I think that if I had to pick one, I would probably pick the last one, just like addressing the fact that there is, you know, the opportunity word, I think, is creating opportunity for everyone to basically participate in all activities. I think is something that is important. I think it does kind of a good job of framing it up and, you know, providing some history of inequity, basically, not to the extent that Corey mentioned, but I mean, I think out of all of these, it's that it, I don't know, I guess it has a little more passe than these kind of just straight up definitions that you would get out of some law book or something.
Yeah, this is John. I guess it's really hard because I read the bottom paragraph for equity and I'm like, oh, that's spot on. And so like to go back to the 3 definitions that just seem woefully inadequate compared to that last one it's hard.
I was kind of thinking the same thing. And the last one, I was rereading the state of Oregon definition. I think the last one is really just kind of restating the state of Oregon. And yeah, it's that definition that is really calling out the problem and the fact that we need to address, there's an actual problem that needs to be addressed, but maybe not in that kind of depressing way you said, where we just acknowledge that everything is terrible and we're just going to keep trying to adapt to the terribleness instead of correcting the terribleness, right?
And just to make sure everyone understands the conversation being had on the papers in person, we handed out 5 definitions on a sheet. And the first one being the state of Oregon definition. Equity acknowledges that not all people or all communities are starting from the same place due to historic and current systems of oppression. Equity is an effort to provide different outcomes of support based on individuals or groups' need in order to achieve fairness in outcomes. Equity actionably empowers communities most impacted by systemic oppression and requires the redistribution of resources, power, opportunity to those community. And the last one being equity, the guarantee of fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement, while at the same time striving to identify and eliminate barriers that have prevented the full participation of some groups. The principle of equity acknowledges that there are historically underserved and underrepresented population, and that fairness regarding these unbalanced conditions is needed to assist equality in the provision of effective opportunities to all groups. That was a lot. And that, do we have any more feedback? Any more thoughts?
This is Corey again. I think perhaps a call out to intersectionality would be good. It does seem to refer to specific groups, but obviously people have crossover in a lot of different groups. So I think some kind of acknowledgement of intersectionality would be great.
So I have about 5 minutes left. And I want to start to funnel this circle. So we do have 5 definitions. The state of Oregon will be moved forward. The last definition will also be moved forward. Of those 3 definitions, though, I want to see how are those 3 resonating? And if we want to move forward one of those 3, which one would we move forward?
Definition 3 for me, Corey.
This is Derek. I would recommend 3 as well.
Yeah, this is John. My vote's for 3.
Same. Well, I don't get a vote. I don't care what I think.
I do
I care
care
what you think, Barb.
Liz, I saw that you came off of mute. Do you have any thoughts?
Oh, if you're talking to me, Liz Martin. No. I'm looking at, I'm comparing 1 and 3. And 1, I mean, it says what I want it to say. Working toward, definition 2 says ensures that, and I don't believe in it. Sorry, God, I want it. I don't. Ensures that is just too hard to commit to.
Okay, that's
I mean,
perfect.
yeah, I don't even know what I'm saying there, but so working toward fair outcomes for people or groups by treating them in ways that address their unique advantages or barriers. I don't see anything wrong with that. It has to, but one of the presence of well-being and success across all groups. Great. 2, absence of discrimination. Okay, yeah, no, I like that. More specific. Okay, I'm on the 3 camp.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And then Carl and Nicholas, I want to just check in to see if there's anything on hearts and minds specifically around these 3 definitions.
I don't have anything to add at this point.
No, same here.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you very much.
I don't see Stephanie there.
Stephanie's not on.
Yes, she is.
Oh, she is?
Stephanie, Aaron?
I'm here. I just don't have my camera on.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I would agree that I like definition 3. If I had to choose one of those 3, that one I think is the best. What I like about definition 2 is the last line, that equity is a measure of justice. And I think that that's one thing that doesn't really get addressed in definition 3. So it could be implied by both of those 2 statements in definition 3, but really justice. I mean, equity, I've seen a lot of people who've not been able to, if you think of justice in the legal definition of it, not have equitable access to representation and justice in the criminal or civil systems. And so for me, justice really, really stands out because there are so many barriers to accessing or getting justice for anything that harms you, or that, so I like that word justice. It just personally resonates with me. But if I had to choose one, I would go with definition 3. Sorry, I'm just rambling.
No, thank you so much. I think for me, you allowed me to get into your thought process, which is extremely valuable. So I appreciate that.
Aaron, and then Amanda, what are your thoughts?
Hi, this is Amanda. I'm fully in agreement with 3 as well. I do have just issues with the word fair. Like, I don't know, I always tell my kids, like, life is not fair. There's just things that aren't going to be fair. So I don't know, that's just me and I guess my personal philosophy, but it's hard to make everything fair for everyone all the time. So yeah, but all that to say, I'm in agreement with 3.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Aaron? Aaron, can you hear me?
And it's okay.
Okay.
Move on.
What we're gonna do is we're gonna move forward, but I'm grateful for the time you allowed me to come and present. And I already talked about the framing that we're gonna move through, so we'll go ahead and present it back to you
Aaron,
in
unmute.
just a bit.
Just so
Aaron.
you know.
Okay, in the interest of
Could
time.
do my,
Yeah.
I guess, to me, maybe I missed a step, which is why wouldn't we just stick with the state of Oregon definition? You know, in the interest of simplicity, everybody from the same starting point. And I mean, I think I get the answer. These others are much simpler, but that state of Oregon definition really is the one that doesn't just tell you what equity is, tells you why we need to treat people differently in order to achieve fair, you know, that mythical thing called fairness.
Yeah.
Does not mean treat everybody the same. So, you know, I know that's kind of a rewind, but you know, that would be myself as an elected person. I am always kind of looking up, is there a definition used by even more that we can, you know, glom onto ourselves? So, but I still think 3 is the one that does a really good job in just 2 sentences. And, you know, I think that's why I said 3, but either way, that's
Thank you
just a
so
comment.
much. No, I appreciate it. In the interest of time, I'm going to pass it back to John, but
course.
please know that I don't have, I want to share language with all of us. So I have no like, hey, I have no preference here. I just want to make sure that when we use the word, we're all on the same accord and we can move towards equitable outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. I move that we table agenda item number 8. I'm doubtful that anyone met with their subcommittee since the last meeting. So if that's okay, I'd like to scratch that off the agenda for this meeting.
Yeah, and John, if I could interject there for subgroups, not subcommittee, but just to
Subgroup,
be very
yes.
distinct in the legal requirement we have for our public recording and public records. I am encouraging everyone, I do have an assignment for the subgroup captains to go back and reassess the timelines that you've provided in your initial work plan. I think that we've got some things that we're going to be done in September and potentially by the end of the year. And I want to make sure that we're sticking to those SMART goals where it's clear, achievable, and all the other parts of that, right, in terms of time-based. So just again, the assignment for everyone, the 3 subgroup meeting captains to please go through these. I'll email you what they are, but make sure that you have something scheduled with everyone for October.
Great. Moving on to agenda item number 9. Do you want me to read this whole thing? Cassandra?
I think that I put it up on the screen.
Okay. We will be electing a new chair and vice chair to serve 1-year terms at the next meeting in October. So think about what you would like to have as your position in the committee if you have the time. And you can volunteer or nominate a fellow COBAC member with their blessing.
Yep. And per the charter, Carl automatically will be put into nomination for the chair, moving from vice chair to chair. And obviously a gigantic, huge thank you to both John and Carl for your leadership, advocacy, and commitment to COBAC over the last year.
Here.
Okay, item number 10, COBAC roundtable, 1 minute per member. Say what you've been doing, meetings attended, information, firsthand experiences. If anyone has anything they want to say.
And I know, Liz, you had something specific you'd like to share.
I do. And I think I can share this image.
Liz, I'm sorry, I sent an email just about the public keeping that
face.
We don't have, okay.
Yeah, I blurred out her face, but I'd have to, let me get the image up. Well, anyway, maybe you don't need this. So I decided to go check out the new accessible boardwalk at Drake Park a couple weeks ago. And it was just like this magical moment. I'm, walking down, here's this young woman in a wheelchair, and she's right up against a ponderosa pine tree, and she's kind of looking at the bark and sniffing the bark. And this path was designed, like there's actually a break in the railing so that the tree is right kind of there and accessible. And it was this magic moment. And I let her have it for a little while, and then I interrupted her and I said, "Oh my gosh, can I take your picture? I'd love to share this." Because this is a brand new boardwalk. It was made for exactly the experience you're having. And so we chatted for a little bit. She's from Portland. This is her first time in Bend, and she was with her mom. And she was just really grateful, very, very appreciative that the boardwalk was completed that way, and was really grateful to hear that such a thing as COBAC exists in the city of Bend. So it was, I don't know, it was a great moment. So.
Great. This is John. I'd like to thank the committee for signing on to that grant letter for Parks and Rec, for their applying for money for making the river more accessible. And I'm glad for Cassandra putting that all together. I know it was a pain in the butt and you're overworked, but you still found time to do it. So thank you.
Good to give a quick update. This is Derek. It's going to be transit related. Soft launch of our new Route 9, which is going to be in Southeast Bend. Very ADA accessible, going to Larkspur Community Center, Alpenglow Park, and if folks can see this, Caldera High. We actually extended the route to also include the some of the mobile homes on Broster House, where there's a lot of need for transit, low income, Spanish speaking residents who live there. And then there's going to be an express bus all the way back up 3rd Street. So we already have a Route 1 that'll stop when people pull the cord, but it won't pick folks up except at certain stops. So we're going to do a soft launch of this on Monday, and then you'll hear about it probably that following week. We'll do a press release. We just want to make sure that the drivers are getting the stops dialed in, and we've got the vehicle announcements working, and just making sure that it's ready to go before that you can still ride it on Monday. So just wanted to let you know that we're really, a lot of community members were being vocal about wanting to add this route. And so we stepped up and got the drivers on board to make it happen. So
can I see that map?
You sure can.
Thank
Yep.
you.
And we unveiled it at the Alpenglow Welcoming Week event.
Excellent. Anyone else? No? All right. We have the Accessibility and Equity Manager update.
Thank you, John. Just a few things. I know that in the interest of time, we'll try to keep them brief. Just a welcoming week recap, Instagram post from an advocate in the disability community that I wanted to share that's timely, a review of the stipend program surveys, and an email that will go out talking about the November and December meeting dates that will be adjusted per our conversation back in February, and then also to accommodate holidays that are taking place at the end of November. So thank you so much to Whitney, John, Liz, Derek, and Amanda for all coming forward and being part of Welcoming Week, for having booths at Welcoming Week. It was such a wonderful, as Andres had mentioned, event to be in community with folks. You can see some photos that are here. We have photos from the main booth where Kathy, who's in the back of the room, was instrumental, hugely instrumental in making this a reality. Thank you to Kathy. The booth that we have members from our community posing. We had community groups, and we have got Kenny witnessed here from the Fathers Group. We also had a DJ and music, and also local BIPOC women artists that were present as well. So it was a really wonderful celebration. Thank you to Stephanie also for being present with us. Specific shout outs to Whitney, Amanda, and Liz Woodfin for representing your nonprofits and organizations. We had commute options with Whitney being present, full access high desert from Liz, and Diversibility INC from Amanda and her family, which was wonderful. So thank you all so much for being there. And we're looking forward to the 2024 welcoming week already as we move forward with that. The other portion was, again, looking to Rebecca Tossig for this really, I think, timely conversation about, for many of us, we know that September is synonymous with going back to school for students of all ages. And I'm always advocating, I know I'm always giving you little bits of media and information, but like expanding our horizons of what we know advocates in our community are doing and saying and their perspectives. So this week featuring, or this month, I should say, Rebecca Tossig, her book, which is absolutely can't recommend it enough, is Sitting Pretty, The View from My Ordinary, Resilient, Disabled Body. And so in the spirit of going back to school, there's a particular Instagram piece of information that she shared with her groups. And I'm going to read that out loud because I think it's really important to think about disability in all spaces and especially in schools as well. Every day for the first month of school, this one kid in Otto's class would find me during pickup and ask, "Why are you in that wheelchair?" Every single day. It wasn't a low-key, just out of curiosity question. It was urgent. And every time I said the same thing, lightly and warmly, "This is how I move through the world." There are other ways I could have met that curiosity, but honestly, it was never my highest priority. It always overlapped my end of day reunion with Otto, the moment I wanted to hold his cheeks in my hands and laser beam love straight from my eyes into his. After day 3 with the urgent questioner, I felt like this kid and I were locked in an internal loop. Like even after death, I'd still be here in this preschool room, forcing my mouth into a smile. This is the way I move through the world. And he'd glare at me as he tripled down, "But why are you in that wheelchair?" I'm not telling you this story to bestow great wisdom from on high about how to talk to kids about wheelchairs, although I do have thoughts. This is just a story about a disabled mother, a story as breadcrumbs for myself and anyone else fumbling down this less charted path, not as a guide to follow, but a line of tokens to clock and know someone else was here. Right here in the sting of the kid's incessant interrogation, worried what this ritual, what any of the public scrutiny we're under when we're together, will mean to my observant, complicated, wonderful son. And also here in the moment when last week, after a solid month repeating the same scene again and again, I rolled into Otto's classroom. Otto and this kid were playing the Magna tiles at a table. I scooted up next to them, and this kid turned to me. "Otto's mom, look what I made." My whole self split open. Teeny white butterfly unicorns filled the air between us, and I heard heavenly angels belting joy to the world. The spell had been broken. I never gave this kid the perfect explanation to help him understand me, but I did show up every day until this kid's brain slowly settled into the very ordinary idea of a mom who uses a wheelchair. Isn't that magic? Isn't that powerful? Isn't that exhausting? Amazing author, incredibly moving words, and very timely for finding ourselves at the end of September. I will be sending an email with further updates about a stipend survey that we're requesting all COBAC members to complete. And with that, I'll turn it over to our councilwoman, Barb Campbell.
Thank you. I had been thinking just how proud I am of all of the work we're doing on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And I am afraid that we're missing one space, and that's the youth voice, young people. They're not old enough to vote. And I'll be asking just this coming week for a work session on the idea of having a youth advisory council. A couple of high school seniors have come to me with this idea, which is fantastic. I understand 23 other cities already have youth advisory councils. And so we're going, I hope, to start that process and try to think about how could we involve those folks as far as I'm concerned, it's their world. I'm just living in it. I'm just trying to take care of it for those people who will be here long after I am. And am looking forward to that conversation about how we can involve those young people some more. And then the other thing is just to let you know, this is one of my squeaky wheel issues, which means that, oh yeah, anytime Eric King sees me, he knows I'm liable to ask about the Drake Park footbridge, which anyone who's crossed over knows it's getting closer and closer to impassable for folks specifically who use some sort of wheels to get around. And we have some funding that we might be able to use for that. It comes from TRT, from room tax. We've got a pot of money that's kind of sitting. I thought that sure seems like a tourist facility to me, that footbridge. Maybe we would be able to use some of the funds on that, but just wanted to let this committee know that that is something that's kind of top of mind for me, that one and the Columbia Bridge as well. And just, that's it. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you.
Mhm.
The next Go Back meeting is Thursday, October 26, 2023 from 12 to 1:30 p.m. Please note the time change for the meeting. Is there any further business? In that case, we will adjourn the City of Bend Accessibility Committee, September 28, 2023. Meeting is adjourned at 2:32.